Welcome back to our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia for part 2 of the restoration of the Statton Old Town solid cherry double drop leaf gate leg dining table. Yesterday we spent an inordinate amount of time repairing these little adjustable feet on the legs, and we stripped the tabletop, the table sides, and both leaves. Last night before I turned in, I flipped the table up on its top to get a good look at the underside and do any repairs that need to be done here. And unfortunately, despite my best efforts, I did drip some stripper on the underneath of the leaves. So we're going to have to do a little something about that to pretty that up. I don't want that to stay. We'll look at touching up the finish on the legs, anything that needs to be taken care of here. We will unscrew the individual drop leaves so I can make sure I do a real good job cleaning these joints here before we put it back together. Once I'm happy that the bottom of the table is up to snuff, we'll flip it back up on its top and we'll start on its legs, and we'll start to work on refinishing the top. So stick with us, we're making good progress. And we're looking at the interior of the gate leg here and the gate leg apron here, and you can see it's just filthy with, I don't know what that is, so we're going to have to get that taken care of while we've got the table upside down. To remove each of the drop leaves, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hinges. This hinge here, as it turns out, is missing a screw. And then here's one of the legs, and you can see these. This is just typical wear for the bottoms of a leg. We're going to have to touch this up, and we'll touch this up here too. So let's get going. I've got the leaf off and set up on a little stand, and you can see just how gross this end of the drop leaf is, where the cove is. Not only do you get dirt and all in there over the years, but when I refinished it, no matter what I tried, I still got some stripper in here. And then if you look carefully, you can see where the finish was removed by our stripper. If you want to avoid this, take the time to lay a piece of blue tape on the underside of whatever you strip. It'll get most of it. What I'm going to do here is just light sand this and tone it and shoot some lacquer on it. You can see the finish is completely worn off here. We've got some scrapes here. I'm going to get this cleaned up, and I'll decide what I'm going to do for a finish on it. I actually may sand this down and then shoot another whole coat of lacquer on it, because it looks like it's had quite a little bit of wear. So let me get going. I'm going to put some lacquer thinner on a rag and just start scrubbing in here with a rag, and also with some 4/0 steel wool, and get this cleaned up first. Then we'll sand here, and then we'll decide what we're going to do for color and finish. I've got it cleaned up and light sanded now, and just got to address some of these spots that are a little light in color. I've got some brown mahogany dye stain that I've diluted with some acetone, and that's a pretty good color match. So I'm just going to go around and work some of this in and try to tone down some of these light spots. I'm not looking for a perfect match. This is the underside of the table. We're just trying to make it so it looks a little bit nicer, and then we are going to shoot a top coat on this. and we have the ability to tone with some brown. So there you go. Let me get going on this. And I put some color on there and a little bit of Van Dyke brown glaze. What you see here is where there's no lacquer on it, and that difference in gloss will disappear once we shoot the coat. But what I'm trying to show you is the color. Is we've got the color pulled back so it looks much better. And when we shoot the lacquer coat on it, it'll look great. Remember, this is the back side of the drop leaf. It's not going to be seen, but we want it to be as nice as we can make it with a reasonable amount of effort. Okay, I'll pull the other one off and do the same thing. Okay, I've got both leaves colored and prepped for top coat. I'm sorry, both drop leaves, and then these are the leaves for the table. Touch up any missing color, leaving it rough looking on the back. If you're wondering how I dated this table, we call that a clue. November 4th, 1975, and that's the Old Town stamp. So everything, the back side of the leaves, the back side of the table leaves are ready to be sealed. That's just to protect them, make them look a little bit nicer. And let's see what we can do about this mess that we have on the apron of the table. This is just crud cutter. And I think this is just household dirt from years of meals and kids and whatever. And yeah, that's coming right off. Alright, so I'm going to go through and get the whole table cleaned up, and then we will start on the color touch-ups for the tops of the legs. Okay, I'm working on touching up the legs, and what I'm using, as always, is the Mohawk Blend All powder stain. So get away from the light so you can focus on this. But it's just a powdered color pigment, and I just put a little bit on my finger for this particular technique that I'm using, and I touch it and blend it over the area that needs a color touch-up. I take just a regular can of satin lacquer that I bought at Home Depot, spray it on it, it's done. We'll do up here. This may take a couple of coats, that's pretty light. Yep, there you go. Alright, so that's what I'm doing. I'll get all these legs finished and I'll bring you back. Okay, I've mixed up some lacquer and I thinned it quite a bit with some toner I had left over. And let's see how that does on the backs of these table leaves and also the drop leaves. Okay, after some sealer and a little bit of lacquer and a little bit of playing around, that's the underside of the table. I'm much happier with the way that looks. While it was upside down, I waxed the legs. They came out great. Here's the other leaf, the other drop leaf, which looks good. And here's the underside of the table leaves, which has, in my opinion, just enough lacquer on it. I will rub these out with some steel wool just to mute them down a little bit. Lessons learned, I need to be more careful when I strip. Next time I'm going to tape off the undersides of everything. I spend an inordinate amount of time correcting those drips, and I know better than that. So sometimes we try to speed things up and take shortcuts, and like Eric always says over on the South Main Auto Channel, sometimes you got to slow down to go fast. So that was a good lesson for me. Alright, I'm going to let this all harden up, and we'll buff out the underside of these, and then we will flip the table up on its legs and start to work on the top. Okay, the table's back up on its legs.
I've light sanded it with 220. I wiped it down with naphtha, and while it was wet, I was able to identify little dings and scratches that need to be taken care of. I've marked each of those with blue tape. And the funny thing is, it's almost impossible to see these unless they're wet. There's one right there. There's a scratch over here. So what I'll do, you see this scratch here? Let me wet that for you. Alright, it looks almost like there's nothing there. Put a little bit of alcohol on it, and right away you can see that big scratch. It's actually a dent. And if we don't identify that and take care of it, when we put our top coat on, that's going to show like crazy. So I'm going to go along with my iron and steam out whatever dents I have to. If there's any deep ones, I'll fill them in, and then I will bring you back. I've showed this dent steaming technique a number of times on the videos, but we're going to look right here. This is a clean, believe it or not, damp rag, hot iron. You put that, I do that every time. You put the damp rag on there, and the heat goes in there and it lifts up the crushed fibers, and it raises the dent up. Okay, got a couple more to do. Sometimes if you have a chip that's too deep to steam out, what you're going to do is fill it. And this is Mohawk's, I can't remember what they call this, quick fill or something like that, but you just take a hot knife and this wax, it's kind of a wax and epoxy, and you match it to the lightest color in the field that you're repairing, and you just overfill the hole, and there it is. Now this system also wants you to press this wax down into the hole with a piece of metal that acts like a heat sink. I left it on the other table. So here's the system. You've got your fill sticks with Mohawk. They're prefaced by M310. They come in different colors. They've got this little plastic scraper that I'll show you how to use in just a minute. You can use a little piece of a 3M pad as well. This piece of metal here I use after you put the epoxy wax mixture down on there before it cools. You just push it down. It acts like a heat sink and helps force it in. And then you take your little rasp and gently just rasp over it, and it takes it right down. So you can see there's the fills. It's nice and smooth. It's hard, and then it'll disappear when we put the finish under it. And we've got a little bit of a dark spot here from the tape that I put on for some reason. We'll get rid of that. But there you go. That's how you can fill in those chips and dents. Remember, the secret is to match your color to the lightest color in the field. That makes it easiest. Okay, I got a couple more of these to fill in, and then we'll be done. Of course, when you're doing your final inspection prior to putting on your finish coats, do the best job you can. But unless you're Superman and the item that you're working on is pretty much brand new, I promise you're going to miss at least one dent or ding or scratch. It's not the end of the world. If it shows up when the piece is finished, there's ways of touching it up at that point. Okay, the next step is again another sanding with 220 using a cork block, absolutely with the grain. You're getting the wood prepared for its first coat of steel. I'm not trying to get this color up, I'm trying to get this nice and flat. Any little scratches will come out, any raised fibers I'm hoping to get sheared off. Get this nice and flat, that's why I'm using a block. Don't sit there and go over one spot multiple times and dig a hole in your tabletop because it'll show. as soon as you put your top coat on. Watch your seams, you don't flatten those out. And you can see we've got quite a little bit of sanding dust in there already. Okay, let me get to work here. And if I just take this little wire brush to my sandpaper, I can get those pockets of sanding dust out of there. Just like that. And after that sanding, I open up the leaves, drop the drop leaves, and get my rag and get inside all these joints to make sure there's no dust in there. Don't want to be putting lacquer down on top of the dust and making lacquer mud. So this is all wiped off. I'm going to give it one more wipe down with naphtha, and then we're ready to shoot a seal coat. Now I'm going to be very honest with you, the table, let me bring it in here and see if you can see the difference. The tabletop, even though it does have color in it, is much, much lighter than the base. And I am actually contemplating using a wiping stain on this to try to pull it a little bit closer. What I would do is take a brown mahogany and thin it down with mineral spirits and see if I can pull it closer. But I'm just not sure that's the right thing to do. I have much more control if I shoot dye and toners on these. And I think that's probably what I'm going to do, and hope that's the right decision. You know, nothing's ever cut in stone with these. It's not that complicated. You're just putting color on wood, and it's just the way you want to do it. And I'm just afraid if I put the wiping stain on it and it doesn't take the way I hope it does, I'm going to have to take it back off, and I've about stripped and sanded this table enough to hang myself. So what I'm going to do is wipe it down with naphtha. We're going to hit it with a first of 2 sealer coats. We'll sand between coats, and I think that may be it for the day. I may let it sit overnight and get hard before I start shooting color on it. But we'll see how it goes. I've got things taped up and ready to go to shoot the sealer. What I'm going to do is leave these leaves down so I can get in here and seal these joints. And then I'll shoot the tops of the leaves, give it a little while, and then I'll pull this up and shoot these while they're flat rather than getting on my hands and knees and shooting them down here. So I want to make sure I do a good job along the edges of these drop leaves. So that's the plan. I've got the table frame taped off. I've got tape on the apron so I don't get sealer and stuff on all that stuff that we've already got taken care of. And remember, that's got wax on it too. So I think we're ready to go. Let me go mix up some sealer and we'll get shooting. Sealers on. Because I've sanded this piece so much with 220, I'm going to knock the sealer down just using 4/0 steel wool. And remember, there's a grain to steel wool, so use it in this direction so you're going against the grain, otherwise you're just going to cut grooves in it this way. And all we need to do is just rub it. You'll feel the little bits of roughness in the finish, and as you rub the steel wool, it's going to go away, and it's going to become almost glass smooth, which is what you want. And it comes out beautifully. Okay, I'm going to finish up with the steel wool, shoot a second seal coat on this, and then knock off for the day. And when we come back, we will start to play with color and top coat and try to get this so it matches the legs. And obviously the top is always a little bit lighter than the legs, but that's what we're shooting for. So this is going to be it for today for the video. I will bring you back tomorrow and we'll start to play with color. And one quick point when it comes to the joints between the boards. When I shot the first coat, I had these boards separated. When I shoot the second coat, these boards will be together. And I'll be able to get the sealer in here, take care of that. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, welcome back. We've got 2 coats of sealer on the table. This, you may recognize this chair. This is one of the ones in the set of 6 that we redid a couple of videos ago. And this is pretty much the color I'm shooting for on this tabletop. And it's a little bit redder and a little bit browner. So I think what I'm going to do to start with is to glaze it with some burnt umber glaze. And then we'll shoot a top coat over that, and then we'll be able to drop back and punt. If it needs to be browned up a little bit, I can do that. I'd rather do that than go with a brown glaze, like a Van Dyke brown, and then have the table start off too dark. So I want to see if I can preserve that red and then just work up to it. Again, remember, we don't want it to exactly match the legs. We want it a little bit closer to the back of this chair here. I'll take you off the stand and show you what the legs look like. The light in here is far from perfect, but you know, again, there's our leg color, and that's a very, you know, it's got red in it, but it's pretty dark. And there's our top, and there's our chair that we're shooting for. So we're going to glaze it, and we'll do that next. And you've seen me do this before. This is the burnt umber glaze. I use a foam brush to put it on, and then a chip brush to take it off with a rag. I'll do each section individually, so here we go. And there you go. Hope you can see the difference. Alright, I got some work to do. I'll bring you back when I'm done. It's all glazed. I think we made a good choice with the color. I think it's going to look very, very good. We've got to give it a couple hours to flash off before we hit it with a lacquer coat. And we want to make sure that we get that done within 6 of application. That's what Mohawk wants. So give it a couple of hours and then get in here before 6 is up and get it top coated. So we'll be back in a little bit. And we're back. The manufacturer says to shoot another coat of sealer over top of the glaze, and you've seen me do that. And once that's on and dried, I will obviously rub it down again with some 4/0 steel wool and then start shooting lacquer coats on top of it. You've seen me shoot lacquer 1,000 times. There's no sense in me filling all that. I'll bring you back if something interesting happens, and then at least for the final beauty shot. So I'm going to get spraying, and I will bring you back when we're through. We have the first coat of lacquer on. I wanted you to take a look at this color match, see how close we were able to get this. I'm really pleased with this. I had a little trouble with my gun. The nozzle, unfortunately, when I cleaned it, I didn't tighten it up with a wrench. It worked itself a little bit loose, and I had a heck of a time with orange peel on this first coat. It's my own darn fault. I bought myself a couple of hours of wet sanding tomorrow to try to get this knocked down. It's frustrating when things like that happen, but they do. And instead of giving up, just know how to fix it. So we've got to let this lacquer harden up, and we've got some sanding to do tomorrow, and then we'll get back at it. Good morning. It's very early the next morning, and you can see, I hope you can see, all the orange peel that we have on the table from the nozzle of my paint gun being loose. And we're going to take care of that by wet sanding and then rubbing it out with steel wool. And you can see I did this leaf earlier, and it's now perfectly flat. Obviously the gloss is gone if you compare the two, but hopefully you can see in raking light how much orange peel is on this, and there's none on this. And I'm going to show you how I did it on this next leaf, and then I will do the whole table, and we'll be ready to continue. And what I do in this instance is I use soap and water for lubricant. You can use whatever you want, mineral spirits or whatever. Soap and water works fine for me. And then with the grain, this is 220 wet and dry paper. What I'm trying to do is just flatten the high spots, leave the low spots. Now you got to be careful around the edges. You'll sand right through your color if you're not careful on the edges. And always with the grain. And as you do it, you'll feel it start to smooth out. You also feel some suction when the surface gets nice and flat. Now I'm not putting a lot of downward pressure on this. Maybe just the weight of my hand and the sanding block. And I'm also, sometimes I'll drag my finger, I don't know if you can see that, but I'll drag my finger behind, and it gives me an idea how smooth the board's getting. Now we've got 3 coats of sealer and a coat of lacquer on this, so I'm pretty comfortable we're not going to sand through the bare wood. You wipe it off and you look in raking light, and I can see I've still got some orange peel, so we're not done here yet. So I'm going to continue to sand with my 220 wet, and I'll bring you back for the next step. Okay, we've got the high spots knocked down, but you can see these shiny spots here, like right here. Those haven't been taken care of yet. In general, those tend to be low spots that we haven't reached yet. So what I do for those, again, steel wool, making sure your grain orientation is correct, and then just rubbing it flat with steel wool. Get rid of the shiny spots, make sure you don't eat through your finish. And I'm not grinding down on this really hard, but you know, just enough. Keep looking at it in raking light. You're looking for a nice, smooth, flat, matte finish. See if I can get you up here where you can see how this is developing, but you can see the change, I hope, as I'm hitting it with a steel wool. And all I'm trying to do here is flatten the finish. And I know it's flat when it's got the same sheen all the way across. flatter we can get this, the better the next coat's going to be. So if you can see here, hopefully with the light, this is what we've done, and we haven't got this done yet. See the glossiness here versus the nice matte sheen. So that's how we do it. I've got this one to finish and the rest of the table. So I'll be here a while, but it's my own darn fault. I'll bring you back. I hope you can see the difference between this side that's been sanded and rubbed out and this piece that's just been wet sanded. You can see all the orange peel still remaining here. We've got it flattened down, but we've got to hit this with steel wool. This one's done, this one's done, and we still have this whole side of the table to go. But that's the technique. I'll just keep going. Okay, it's been about an hour and a half and the table's done. This is a technique that you use as part of putting down a high gloss finish. In other words, you shoot a couple of coats of lacquer, you wet sand, you rub it out, you get it nice and flat. You shoot 2 more coats of lacquer, you sand it down the same way. Shoot another couple of coats of lacquer, bring it down the same way. And then when you've got your lacquer coat nice and thick and you're down to this nice baby smooth matte finish, then you hit it with a polishing wheel, just like you're polishing your car, various grits of polishing compound, and you'll get that wet piano mirror-like finish. There's a lot more to a gloss finish than just putting on gloss polyurethane or gloss lacquer. All of the top coats that are not gloss have opacifiers in them, basically chemicals that dull them down. And a true gloss finish is not just shiny polyurethane on a bad finish. It's a perfectly flat, clear finish that reflects the light, and that's how you get that real deep, shiny, wet piano look. But we did this to correct a bad mistake that I made when I shot the lacquer coat. We are back on track to lay down a really nice finish on this table. I'm not going to go with a high gloss finish on this. I don't want to put that much time into it, and frankly I don't think it's going to look good. So I will start shooting satin lacquer on this like we always do, and we will come up with a nice finish. This kind of smoothness you can never get is what they call an off the gun finish, where you just shoot it on and then you're done. This technique of sanding and rubbing it out and polishing it up gives you this really, really smooth finish. But yeah, it was about an hour and a half's extra work because I was too stupid to check the nozzle on my gun, and I sprayed orange peel all over this thing, but we saved it. So we're going to give it about an hour to dry completely off. We'll wipe it down with some naphtha, and then we'll start laying on coats of lacquer. Okay, we've got the table ready to spray with lacquer. It's been wiped down with naphtha. The naphtha is flashing off. I want to take a second, for those of you that aren't familiar with an air gun, and show you what it was that I screwed up. The cup of the air gun just unscrews, and that can be set aside. Disassemble the air gun. We take this off here. This collar holds this here. This piece is where the air comes through and atomizes the fluid. So with no air, when you pull the trigger, the fluid comes out this hole, just kind of drips down like, I don't know, just drips down. But air blows through here at, I think this is set at 30 psi, this gun, and it atomizes it and makes it a fine mist that applies the finish. So when you have troubles with atomization, very often these little holes are plugged. Now we'll continue here. We'll take this off. Guess who made sure it was tight last time? And here's the spray nozzle. These come in different sizes. The sizes, and this is a DeVilbiss finish line. The sizes are marked right on it, and this is actually a 1.8. That's the millimeters in diameter of the hole. This is the piece that was not screwed in tightly, and because it was loose, it allowed air to get in, and it just hacked the spray pattern to death. Behind that is this collar that also feeds some air, I believe. And then this is the needle valve that helps meter the fluid runs down here and across this needle valve, and then it gets drawn up by the both the pressure of it pushing down and the air that's misting behind it. And then if you unscrew this adjusts how much fluid is in the spray, and then this needle will come out. Well, here, let me show you. Those of you that have a spray gun know that this is the part that often gets lost. But then you just push your needle back and it comes out. And there's the needle. And then the spray pattern you adjust with this here. And again, this piece also comes out. And all of these things have to be in, they have to be clean, they have to be in correctly, and they have to be in snug, or you're going to have a problem like we had yesterday. So as we put this gun back together, we'll make sure that we do it correctly this time. Make sure that's all the way down. And then the offending spray nozzle. And what I did yesterday when I cleaned this out, and I was in a hurry, I just finger tightened it, and that's not good enough. You need to snug it down with a, by the way, a 1/2 inch wrench works on all the pieces on this gun, which is really nice. Then your atomizer piece goes on, your collar goes on, and when you screw your collar down really tight, you're not able to adjust the spray pattern. So, for example, when you're spraying horizontally, you want these facing in this direction. When you're spraying vertically, you just take your collar, loosen it just a tad, screw it back down, and then you can shoot up and down. Alright, hopefully I haven't screwed anything up this time. No sense you watching me shoot another lacquer coat. I just thought this would be an interesting little diversion. I'm going to start laying down coats of lacquer, and I'll bring you back when I'm done. Well, what do you know, the old goofball can actually spray a coat of lacquer without messing it up. Okay, after 3 coats of sealer and 4 coats of lacquer, I think she's done. That's how she came out. I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to let this sit for a couple of days before I give it the top of final rub out. So I'm not going to put the whole table together for you to see. But you can see, here's the leaves. You can see how nice they came out. So we had a little issue with the orange peel, which we took care of, and I'm glad I was able to show that. But there she is. She looks good. So that's it. Another one's in the books. This Statton solid cherry double drop leaf gate leg dining table from 1975 or 4, I forgot now, is done. Should give somebody another 30 or 40 years of good service. Listen, this stuff isn't hard. Once you understand how your materials react, you get some experience in applying them, it's pretty simple. It all boils down to this. It's just wood, color, and some shiny stuff. So hey, from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia, thanks for watching. Best regards. Take good care. We'll see you next video. Bye.